Previously on Happy Birthday Today.
Myth, noun. These consist of narratives or stories that play a fundamental role in society.
History's most polarizing explorer, Christopher Columbus. A real bad person, but I guess that's technically up for debate. It's really not that obvious bad. In this new genre of American historical fiction, attempting to be historically accurate where you choose to be.
Dogs' mouths are cleaner than humans, but man, are they cute.
I come away feeling like storytelling has this transformative effect on human culture and psyche. We as people and humans have a need for self-reflection, but it can lead to severe deification. But what about conspiracy? Next week?
Flying saucers, 5G, Pizzagate, soul cooking, flat earth, heart machines, 9/11 drifters, Tuskegee syphilis experiments, chemtrails, black helicopter, Bigfoot, assassination, Mount Entities, death, dog hunters, content, body,
Whoa. What happened?
Well, you started researching conspiracies like 2 weeks ago, and eventually the concept of a deeply interconnected world of both massive and minuscule secret plans by groups or people to do some heinously unlawful, covered up by the powers that be, drove you to laying right here on the ground, babbling to yourself a bit.
I guess I sort of remember that. Guess I ended up in a deeper rabbit hole than I imagined. Thank you, new character Buck the Sock.
Of course, happy birthday. So what's today's show gonna be about?
Well, Buck, I think you and I both know what this episode is going to be about.
Conspiracy?
Healthcare. Wait, what did you say?
Conspiracy.
That's what it's going to be about. That's what it's going to be about. Conspiracy.
I assumed.
You assumed right. You assumed correctly, Buck. Well, here we go.
Okay, I know you and I will make great friends. I know you and I will be good friends. The things we will learn, the things today.
Hello everyone. Happy birthday. That's my name. Today, we're going to talk about a very complex topic. An expansive web of scheme, machination, cabal, plot, collusion, intrigue that makes this world just a big old drag to live in sometimes. And that's to say the least, really. And this is a word I'm sure you've all heard before. This word and concept is conspiracy. Whether it's documentaries, internet talking heads, Reddit forums, uncles at Thanksgiving, moms on Facebook, or all your good friends at the Anglo-communist potlucks, everybody's talking about conspiracies. It feels like conspiracy theories are more in the mainstream discourse than ever before. From heads of state to dudes named Alex, everyone's talking about this screaming hellfire that we call a world. A fire that was lit long ago, but has been growing in intensity. Today, my friends, we're getting in the weeds. So where do we start? Let's consider the word. Hey, we're kicking it over here now by this plant. That's what happens when you move into a different apartment. Thanks for noticing. But yes, Mimi and Webby, baby, are old friends at Merriam-Webster. Let's get that definition for today's subject. Conspiracy, noun. Plural, conspiracies. Definition of conspiracy. 1. The act of conspiring together. For example, they were accused of conspiracy to commit murder. Juicy, scary. 2. A. An agreement among conspirators. Example, uncovered a conspiracy against the government. Again, juicy, going a little deeper, talking about the government. We're gonna paint this picture. We're gonna see the world of conspiracies. Thank you, Miriam. B, a group of conspirators. Example, a conspiracy made of disgruntled aristocrats. Very interesting example, very business plotty. That's a conspiracy, that's a good one. This is a bit of a bare bones definition though. So for the sake of clarity, we're also going to reference dictionary.com. Dictionary.com defines conspiracy as such. Noun, we can agree there. Plural, conspiracies, we can agree there. 1, the act of conspiring. Okay, using the word to describe the word. 2, an evil, unlawful, treacherous, or superstitious plan formulated in secret by 2 or more persons, semicolon. Plot. That's a good one. 3, a combination of persons for a secret, unlawful, or evil purpose. Basically the same definition as the second one. Number 4, law. An agreement by 2 or more persons to commit a crime, fraud, or other wrongful act. So this is more of an agreement, more in the law, conspiracy to commit murder, as they discussed in the Merriam-Webster definition. 5, any occurrence in action, semicolon, combination in bringing about a given result. That's any concurrence in action, semicolon, combination in bringing about a given result. So a thing happens, conspiracy to have that happen. I guess that sort of makes sense. Looks like we need to define conspiring. Let's do that. Verb, used without object, conspired, conspired, conspiring. 1, to agree together, especially secretly. To do something wrong, evil, or illegal. For example, they conspired to kill the king. 2, to act or work together towards the same result or goal. For example, the wind and rain conspired to strip the trees of their fall color. Very poetic, dictionary.com. Very. Verb, used with a subject, defined as to plot, something wrong, evil, or illegal. Wrong, evil, and illegal. That comes up in almost every version of the definition that you can find. So conspiracy, literally on a definition level, it's scary, unlawful, evil, and against the rules, against the law. It has treachery involved, it has intrigue involved, it has mystery involved. Now that we hear the definition and understand this word, we need to give ourselves an example to better define it in its worldly sense. Oh yeah, and to do something real special for today's episode, we're gonna have Nicole of It's Always Hard Having Your First Talk Show come on to talk about one of her favorite conspiracies. Take it away, Nicole.
Thanks, happy birthday. I'm coming to you live from a pre-recorded video I took earlier today, as in right now, on my phone, in my house. A little birdie flew into my dreams last night and told me that you wanted to know the dark and twisted tale of Avril Lavigne's conspiracy theory. So let's just get into it. In 2002, a young Avril Lavigne released her debut album titled Let Go, with such great songs as Complicated and everyone's favorite anthem, Skater Boy. This album became, like, very quickly the second best-selling album in the world. And Avril Lavigne was, like, 14 years old when this happened. And as we all know, like me and you both, happy birthday, being famous can really take its toll, especially on teens like us. And it was just a little bit too overwhelming for Apple. It was too overwhelming for Avril Lavigne. So what she did was she hired this woman named Melissa Van Doorn, who was like a body double look-alike of Avril Lavigne, and she would go to the red carpets and like the Hollywood stuff, because Avril Lavigne was like, I'm a punk, and I don't want to do that. And it's freaking me out. Why are all these people taking my picture? Jeez, leave me alone. I'm a punk, don't take my picture. So then they became friends. From what I've heard, they became friends. And then Avril Lavigne released another album in 2004 entitled, I don't remember. I wrote it down somewhere else. Losing My Grip, I think it's called. Yeah, Losing My Grip. And there's a lot of like hidden messages in there that Avril was like, this is too much, I can't handle it anymore. And so then we don't hear from Avril Lavigne until around 2007, when her third album comes out, The Best Damn Thing, which was actually the first album I ever bought with my own money. But the thing is, she wasn't the same Avril anymore. And this is where it gets crazy. So Avril Lavigne's first and second album were pretty much like pop. No, they were punk. Jeez. They were pretty much punk. Major punk, complicated. Oh my god. Yeah, it's complicated. And it's punk. And then Best Damn Thing comes out, and she's like a punk princess, which that's not the trajectory we all thought she was going in. So a lot of people think that Avril either was like, peace, I'm out, and she was like, I'm gonna go live in the mountains, and like Melissa can take my spot, or she died. I don't know how. I don't want to make any assumptions, but she was pretty sad. And so then everyone, the suits, Avril's suits, were like, we can't let her career die with her. So they had Melissa fill in. And then Best Damn Thing came out. And then everything started really kind of unraveling when Avril released that song Hello Kitty in 2013, which is like a weird like anime song, which is not what anyone expected from the punk god herself. So really, like, we don't know. It could be Melissa, it could be Avril, maybe she just loves anime and that's what she like found out through years of fame. But my own theory is that she got married to Chad Kroeger, and then like years later she told him, listen Chad, my name isn't Avril, I don't like when you call me that, please call me Melissa, that's my real name. And Chad was like, no, this cannot be true, I fell in love with Avril, not with Melissa. And he divorced her. So that's my theory. I have no evidence to back that. So I have no evidence to back that or anything I just said, but it is a conspiracy theory, and I think it could be true or maybe not. Bye, happy birthday.
Name that conspiracy theorist. Who could this be? American radio broadcaster, author, known for their 1991 book Beyond the Pale Horse. Former member of the ufology community, died in 2001 in a firefight with police. Give you a few seconds to think about it. Did you get it? Oh, well, it's Bill Cooper. Oh, Bill, you crazy, crazy person.
Ain't knowledge grand? Learning new stuff and growing those brain cells out into these weird, like, big size, full of knowledge, little popcorns, stretching your brain to new heights that are out of frame. You can't even see them, they're so high. Fiction reading is fun, of course. Right here I have Endgame by Samuel Beckett. I think he was Irish, so doing the... But fiction reading is storytelling. Heroes and villains, grand, fantastical journeys, good versus evil, orcs versus hobbits. These worlds can be drawn from the past, like stories based in medieval times or the Middle Ages, adding in elves and wizards. Or you can look into the distant future. That's where you get sci-fi, Philip K. Dick, and stuff like that. 2001: A Space Odyssey, Arthur C. Clarke, that's his name. These engrossing tales are passed down generation to generation. Some of the sci-fi written in the 1930s is still read today. So all of this fiction writing ties us back to myth. We talked about that on the last episode. And of course, myth is defined as myth. Noun. 1A. A usually traditional story of ostensible historical events that serves to unfold part of the worldview of a people or explain a practice, belief, or natural phenomenon. Creation myths, by example. B. Right. We are all clear on that. So we were talking about myth and how it's connected to storytelling and folklore and folk tales. But these myths sort of turned from entertainment into historical fiction. These notions of creating the framework of storytelling, 3-act structure, the hero's journey, was beginning to be applied to history itself. Historical fiction is defined as a story that takes readers to a time and place in the past. Huckleberry Finn is a great example. A heartwarming tale of a young boy going down the Mississippi River in southern antebellum with all the questionable language and authenticity that comes with it. So I think we, you and I, us, we understand fiction when presented thoroughly as fiction. Storytelling, made-up characters, made-up story, 3-act structure. You have these tools in place to create stories. These stories might reflect real life, or have tales, or have morality, and have theses that can affect and impact real life, but they are not real. That's where historical fiction adds this muddiness. Taking pieces of history, taking times in history, taking people from history, and deifying them, mystifying them, and adding elements of conventional storytelling. But when there's fiction, there's of course the distinction of non-fiction. Non-fiction
is defined as
prose writing that is based on facts, real events, real people, such as biographies or event history. So a collection of truths, truthiness. So fiction and non-fiction. Story versus fact. conspiracy theory finds itself sandwiched real tight with no mayonnaise in between these two worlds, fiction and nonfiction. Conspiracy theory gets smeared on all that bread. Between these two tenets of understanding in writing and popular discourse. We've all been exhausted hearing the word fake so constantly. Labeling something as fake gives the average person an excuse to brush it off. But as we can see, at least from history, and the history of how people record things, and the history of how we tell stories to each other, and the history of collecting history, things can get complicated. Take this history of guerrilla television. It's just a quality textbook about different underground video artists, different pirate television stations, and how as technology became more available to the consumer, people began to take television into their own hands. QuaranTV, keep on watching, Thursdays, wink, and other special events, wink, double eyes, double wink. This is an excellent textbook about the history of guerrilla television. Made in 1997, it's just a collection of history and interviews with people to better understand these different groups. There's books like those original autobiographies of Christopher Columbus, perpetuating myth and creating this image of Christopher Columbus that we still have to this day. But I said we would reference some specific conspiracy theories, because there's a lot of them. There's of course the legal definitions of conspiracy when you get into Supreme Courts and courts and stuff like that, but we're not really going to go too far down that route. We're mostly going to talk about how culturally speaking, conspiracy rose to this mainstream prominence that we see today, with growing skepticism and the access to information at all times. So let's journey. Put on your conspiracy waders.
Oh, hi. I was just reading. Teachy birthday here to talk to you fine folks and articulate a conspiracy and kind of give its history to better understand how conspiracy can be perpetuated and amplified and uncovered in this weird world. The conspiracy we're going to talk about, MK Ultra. MK Ultra is commonly referred to as the CIA mind control program. MK Ultra being the code name for the Central Intelligence Agency's experiments on unwilling human subjects into figuring out if they could have some sort of mind control. These experiments on unwilling humans and unknowing humans were done in a sense to see if they could weaken people using psychoactive drugs, massive amounts of torture, to see if they could control your will, weaken you into a state of being able to control you like a zombie. This project was organized by the Office of Scientific Intelligence at the CIA and coordinated by the United States Army Biological Warfare Laboratories. Some of the other parts of the project were labeled different names, such as Project Bluebird and Project Artichoke. This operation officially began in 1953. It was reduced by around 1964 and said to have ended around 1967, but actually continued until around 1973. Or at least residual experiments related to the original MK Ultra program. The scope of this project was massive, including over 80 institutes across the United States and Canada doing these experiments. These experiments in torture on unwilling people, unwilling citizens, were done at hospitals, colleges, prisons. CIA would operate these front organizations, much like the mafia. The CIA ran a brothel where they injected people and dosed them with massive amounts of psychoactive drugs so that they could torture them. And then write it down, like, see what happened. Incredibly unethical and in a lot of ways illegal. Now, all of these experiments were done in the shadows. People would claim they had these wild experiences that they couldn't remember, but they weren't tied back to the CIA specifically because it was shadowy and secret, because the CIA operates in secret. Taxpayer money is secret. The program was first brought into the public eye in 1975 by the Frank Church Committee. This committee was part of the U.S. Congress under President football player Gerald Ford. The investigations were very much blocked by the CIA leader at the time, Richard Helms. Many files were destroyed in 1973, several years prior. But throughout the 70s, as more information was coming out and more of the public was aware of these experiments, documents were pulled that survived through Freedom of Information Act requests. Roughly 20,000 documents were pulled relating to it in around 1977. Senate hearings began after that, or more Senate hearings. It was originally in the Congress, and then it was informed that, a lot of it was gone. So as these new files were found and new files that were connected to it were found, there were more hearings. In 2001, there was more documents released, and in 2018, there were even more documents related to MK Ultra released. Ultra Techie Secret is basically the transcription of those two words together. Here's a fun connection in the origins of MK Ultra. The idea to do these experiments on American people was inspired by the Nazis. The Nazis were using massive amounts of mescaline on prisoners at a certain concentration camp. Author Stephen Kinzer uncovered this connection for the CIA project. And of course, there was Operation Paperclip, where we took top Nazi scientists from Nazi Germany post the war and brought them to the United States to work on all kinds of stuff. So Nazis were brought to Fort Detrick, Maryland, to lessen the impact of these nefarious things. And we see in the Church Committee hearings in the mid-70s that the CIA claimed that these were for just enhancing interrogation. MK Ultra had a budget of roughly $10 million. Now let's adjust for inflation. In 1953 dollars, $10 million comes out to about $87.5 million. Going to unwilling test subjects, giving them massive amounts of LSD and mescaline, and just screaming at them, making them believe crazy stuff, trying to control them, making them do weird tests. Now this is a conspiracy because there was plenty of deniability. But as we've learned from the definition, a conspiracy is when a group of people conspire to do something, conspire to do this act. And as we saw, a lot of it was unlawful, illegal, but it was sanctioned and allowed for the CIA, even though they didn't have to report things specifically back to the Congress or the Senate. The money was given and they basically just did whatever. And then when it was time to pay the piper, they destroyed the documents. This is a long-running conspiracy to look at because obviously there were people who were involved in this study who were claiming these wild things that were happening to them from random government agents, things that were happening to them. They were going to a bar for a night, talking someone up, getting a massive dose of LSD, and waking up 3 days later with no one really to turn to. Who was going to believe them? And if they said the government did it, oh, you're kooky crazy. What are you talking about? The government didn't do that to you. What, are you crazy? The CIA actually had several brothels that they used to bring people in and then give them these massive doses of LSD, known as Operation Midnight Climax. These brothels actually had one-way mirrors. So that sounds absolutely horrifying. So these were incredibly unethical. The CIA even operated special camps outside of the US to evade some laws. They were secret detention camps in places like Europe, East Asia, Japan, East Germany, and the Philippines. All to learn if we could come up with some crazy ways to control people. Isn't the CIA neato? Amidst the panic of Watergate, when Nixon was caught, with his nefarious plot, Richard Helms, as I said, the head of the CIA at the time, decided it'd be a good idea to rip up all those documents. Church Committee came 2 years later, trying to uncover what was going on. A lot of intrigue at this time. Intrigue, a word that's found in conspiracy's definition. Neato. So these were illegal. a lot of the time just taking unwilling citizens off the street and doing this to them, doing this to prisoners. Here's a good quote from that guy Frank Church, who headed the committee in Congress. The Congressional Committee investigating the CIA research, chaired by Senator Frank Church, concluded that prior consent was obviously not obtained from any of the subjects. The committee noted that the experiments supported by these researchers called into question the decision by the agency to not fix guidelines for experiments. All of this hullabaloo caused in 1976 an executive action by, who was that, Carter? Still Ford, that they wouldn't experiment on unwilling human subjects. And thus, case closed, wink. So it is hard to actually know, considering that many documents were destroyed. There wasn't a lot of follow-up data, that among these thousands of participants, we don't really know how many people died. So just to give a brief history of MKUltra, it kind of gives you an idea of what the CIA was doing right after it was formed. The, post-World War II was, again, another kind of Wild West, but this time government-sanctioned and government-funded. Just doing crazy stuff to American citizens and then bouncing across the world and supporting coups. But I digress. We're going into other stuff. This is not the CIA episode of the show. Now that one is going to be a doozy. But I wanted to go over the history of another specific one, MKUltra, since it's shrouded in mystery, and even some people today find it hard to believe that our government, the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, ran brothels, were haphazardly poisoning people, all in a way, torturing, all in a way to figure out if they could control your brain, whether they could control your brain space. And did they figure out they could? Happy Birthday is tired from all this research and all this uncovering. There's a lot more to say, and there's a lot more for me that I want to say. There's a lot more that I want to research. There's a lot more that I want to uncover. There's a lot more that I want to do.